Hello, and welcome to This is Therapy 20 Minutes in the Mind of a Nigerian. I am super glad you're here. This is a space for honest conversations about our inner lives, the thoughts we carry, the emotions we manage, and the pressures we often do not talk about. Every episode in this podcast is a pause, a chance to slow down, reflect, and gently explore what's happening beneath the surface of everyday Nigerian life. This isn't an advice, this isn't diagnosis, and this isn't about having everything figured out. It's about awareness, it's about context, and it's about making space for what we feel. So let's begin. Today, I'm going to paint you a picture, and maybe you're going to be able to recognize yourself in it. You're the one that everybody calls. When someone's relationship is falling apart, they call you. When there is a cousin that doesn't want to listen or a sibling that doesn't want to listen, they call you. When there is crisis at work, they call you. When a family member needs to be talked off a ledge, they call you. And you answer every single time because that's what you do. That's who you are. You're the strong one in the family. But here's what nobody sees: you also have a ledge. You just never let anyone know about it. And there's a specific type of exhaustion that comes with being the person everyone leans on. And it's not just physical exhaustion, it's the emotional labor of carrying your own weight because you are also going through certain things, plus carrying everyone else's weight while acting fine and acting okay so convincingly that everyone forgets to check up on you. They just assume you're fine because you look fine, because you've always been fine. You are you're always fine. Fine is something that's you've gotten so used to, and after a while even you start to believe it yourself. You start telling yourself things like, I don't have time to fall apart, I'll deal with it later, other people have it worse. But the problem is you never get to deal with it later, and the weight keeps stacking, weight upon weight, brick upon brick. And this is something that psychologists call emotional suppression. It's the very bad habit of pushing things down, minimizing your emotions, minimizing things that are going on with you, or ignoring your own emotional experiences. And research consistently shows that over time, suppression never makes anything go away. It doesn't make the feelings go away, it just makes them louder on the ground. And so, what you now have is anxiety, physical tension, numbness, and then you begin to have sudden bursts of anger that seem to come from nowhere. You start to have sleep problems, you start to feel disconnected from yourself, from other people, and even from the things that you used to enjoy doing. Now, let's be honest, this thing doesn't usually begin with us. It doesn't usually start with us, right? So for many of us, especially those of us raised in Nigeria by Nigerian parents, people who grew up in deeply religious families and communities, people with parents who always had to work, being strong was not an option. It was compulsory, it was survival, and it's something that our grandparents had to deal with. They never had the luxury of processing emotions or processing things, and our parents learned it from them, and we're learning it from our parents. And if we're not careful, we're going to pass it on to our children. We've heard things like, this is family issue, keep it in the family, don't let them see you cry, don't let them see you sweat, you have to be strong, other people have it worse, there are children that have not eaten today. And I believe they did it from a place of love. But then what now gets passed down is the idea that vulnerability is weakness, that needing help all the time is a burden, that suffering is something you have to endure, is not something that you explore or you ask questions about. And if you add faith communities into this mix, and you know how the churches we grew up, the religious societies we grew up, then it gets more complicated, because in some churches, and I say this with deep respect for churches or for religious communities that do this, but there is sometimes a culture of performed wellness. We use positive confessions to get by. Yes, positive confessions are good. They help people, but sometimes it's a mask that people wear, right? It's something that we use to escape processing certain emotions. Nobody wants to be the one that looks like they don't have enough faith. Nobody wants to be seen as weak in front of, spiritual leaders or people you look up to. Nobody wants to air their dirty laundry in church, because everybody seems to have it all together when, we're in a church, or when we're in a faith community. And so the wounds we have are not treated, and when suppressed, they just go underground. And when they go underground, they get worse and worse and worse. So today I have a question. And I think this is what this episode is really about. So everything I said before, this is a preamble. Can you pray and still need therapy? The short answer is yes. Absolutely. Yes. But then let me give you a longer answer, because, it's a podcast. We're here to yap. Prayer is a conversation with God. Therapy is a conversation about yourself, your patterns, your wounds, your nervous system, your relational history. These are not competing things. They are different tools for different work. One does not cancel out the other. Right? So, if you broke your leg, you pray, but you also go to the doctor. Nobody will tell you that, if your faith was strong enough, you won't need to go and put a cast on your broken leg. That would be absurd. That would be strange. That would be wickedness. But somehow, when the wound is an emotional wound, when it's depression, when it's anxiety, when it's trauma, when it's grief, we expect prayer alone to be enough. We expect positive confessions to be enough. We expect time to be enough. And for some people, prayer is healing. I'm not going to dispute that. For many, it's part of the foundation. It is not designed to rewire a traumatized nervous system. I understand that it works for some people, but it doesn't mean that for those that go to therapy, or those that decide to go to therapy, they do not have faith enough. Right? So I want to name something very specific. In some faith communities, I will not be naming the specific ones, there is a strong belief that mental illness is spiritual warfare. There is a strong belief that depression is a demon, anxiety is a lack of faith, and that therapy is the world's way of dealing with things instead of God's way. Again, I'm not here to dismiss anyone's theology. I'm not here to dispute anyone's belief. But I'm here to say that people have died. People have suffered in silence for decades because someone told them that they just needed to pray harder. Children of God have struggled alone, ashamed, believing that their pain was just spiritual warfare and spiritual failure. And what they had was a diagnosable and treatable condition. Your faith and your mental health care are not enemies. The enemy in all these things, in this whole equation, is shame and silence. And the lie that you needing help means that you don't have God or you don't trust in God. And so, what does it look like to actually heal? What does it look like to put down the weight of being the strong one? I want to be real with you. It doesn't look like a breakthrough moment where everything suddenly just makes sense. You wake up one morning and things just begin to fall in place. Real healing sometimes is slow, it's quiet, and honestly a little bit boring. It looks like you showing up for therapy and not knowing what to say. It looks like you calling your friends. It looks like you calling your doctor. It looks like you telling one person, I'm not okay, and letting them sit with you in it. It looks like grief, because a lot of healing requires grieving. Grieving the childhood where you had to grow up too fast, grieving the relationships where you gave every single thing you had to give, and in return you got breadcrumbs, you got scraps. Grieving the version of you that held it all together at the expense of actually being sane. And here's something I think is important. Healing doesn't mean you stop being strong. It just means that your strength stops being survival and starts being a choice. There's a difference between a person who can't fall apart and a person who chooses in this moment to hold steady. One is by compulsion. One is from freedom. And healing moves you towards freedom. Now, a few practical things I want to offer, because you're probably thinking, okay, what do I do? What do I do? First, if you've never been to therapy, I want you to demystify it. Therapy is not lying on a couch talking about your childhood for years. You just say, oh, it all began when I was born and I had an elder sibling and that was where it started. It's not that. And to be honest, in Nora, we don't even insist on you lying down on a couch. If you want to sit on the floor, that's fine. If you want to have online therapy because your schedule doesn't allow you to show up for your therapy days, that's fine. And so modern therapy, especially, for trauma and for other things that you may be dealing with, it's often practical, it's often targeted. You will talk, yes, definitely, but you will also learn. So you're unlearning and you're learning. And there are competent therapists specifically trained to work with you and work with what you're dealing with. And if you want a therapist that is from your religion, or the one who shares the same faith with you, they exist and you can find them. Another thing I want to let you know is that medication is not spiritual failure. Depression and anxiety are conditions. The brain is an organ. When a pancreas does not produce enough insulin, we give it insulin. When a brain doesn't know how to regulate certain things properly, there are medications that can help. It's medicine, it's not a lack of faith. And then the third thing I want to tell you is that community matters in healing too. Not the community that expects you to perform, not the community that wants you to show up regardless of how you're feeling or what's going on with you, but a smaller, safer circle where you can actually be known. For some people, that's a small group, a recovery community, a trusted person. Healing can happen with these relationships. In these relationships, healing also takes place in communities, and you get to choose which relationships are safe enough for that work. Before I go, I want to speak to caregivers, helpers, pastors, leaders, parents, or friends who are always strong for someone else. You need care too. Yes, I'm talking to you. You need care too. In fact, you need it more urgently than most people because the weight you carry is compounded by the weight you hold for others. And the world will not always remind you of this. The people who need you will not always notice when you're drowning. And so the responsibility, as unfair as it is, falls to you to create space for your own healing. You cannot pour from an empty cup. I know that this sounds very cliche and you've heard it a number of times, but it is true. And the question is not only whether you are pouring from an empty cup or whether you are pouring at all. Sometimes it is what the cup is made up of, and when last did someone else fill the cup. You're allowed to need help. You're allowed to fall apart, privately or otherwise, to be honest. Your pain does not disqualify you from your calling. Your pain does not disqualify you from the responsibilities you have. If anything, walking through your own darkness equips you to help other people walk through theirs. So, here's what I want to leave you with today. Being strong is not a personality. It is a coping mechanisms, and coping mechanisms serve you until they don't. And then they need to be examined. 2, your faith is real, your prayers matter. And you can also make an appointment. You can also call someone. You can also say, I am not okay and I want to be okay. That sentence, I am not okay and I want to be okay, is one of the most faithful sentences you will ever speak because it is telling the truth. And truth telling is honestly where all the healing begins. You need to be able to acknowledge it to begin your journey of healing. And so, if you're in a dark place right now, please reach out to someone. If you need therapy, reach out to us at Nora Services. Our website is www.noraservices.org, or you can reach us on Instagram at Nora Services. Reach out to someone. You don't have to be strong right now. You just need to take a step towards healing. Thank you for listening. Thank you for willing to feel something today. Share this episode with someone if it resonated with you. Take a minute, take a moment to sit with it first. You don't need to rush the process. If you need to listen to this over and over again, then you can do so. Don't forget to follow this podcast for more conversations like this. And like I said, if you'd like additional support, reach out to us at Nora Services. There is a link attached to this episode. If there is anything you want us to talk about, if there is any question you have to ask, please fill the form. It is anonymous. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.